What is up, my friends on the internet? Back at it with another episode, and it has been a while since I have posted a video. It has been about 2 weeks since my last upload. So, for some channels that might not be a super long time, but for a channel named Daily Cosworks, you would think I would post daily. But I digress. It has been 2 weeks since the last upload, but we are back at it, and on today's episode I am answering all of your questions about the Triumph Scrambler 900. But first, let's do that little cinematic thing, why don't we? So I post videos about this bike all of the time, about weekly, and on every single one of those videos, there's a bunch of comments asking me questions, and some of those questions are repeated time and time again. So I figured it was about time that I answer all of them in one video format. That way I have a link that I can drop to answer anything you might ask. If you ask me a question about this or about that, in regards to the Triumph Scrambler 900, I can say, see this video here, and there'll be a link with the video that'll answer everything you could want to know. So let's get on into it with number one. I almost held up 2 fingers, but that would be 2, not 1. 1 and 1, 2. Let's go. In every video I have posted about this bike, I have at least loosely mentioned the fact that I will be changing these wheels out. I think the spoked wheels are perfectly fine, but I really want to run tubeless wheels. I do less off-roading than the average person that has a motorcycle that can go off-road, but I also do way more big mile trips than the average person. I do a lot of iron butts. I do 1,000 miles in a day quite often. I do heavy mileage. So for me, the ease of plugging a flat really matters, so I want to go tubeless. And a question I get a bunch when I say that is, why don't I just seal these wheels versus buying all new wheels? And the simple answer to that is, I want the bike to look original. I don't love the way the spokes look. I also want the wheels to be clearly different from factory. I want this bike to look modified, you know? So running one of the many mag wheels that are on the market for this bike will make it look more unique, will make it look more original, and just kind of add some flair to it. I want you to know for sure that you're looking at my bike when you see it in a crowd of other scramblers. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna run mag wheels just simply because I like the look of them more, and they will look more different. I think you could also argue that there's a little bit of enhanced reliability with going with a mag wheel that's intended to be tubeless versus having a wheel that wasn't intended to be tubeless and sealing it yourself. That is a system that many people have done. I have friends personally who have done it and had no issues whatsoever. It works, it will continue to work, but you gotta admit the thing that is being used as it was intended to be used is always gonna be a little bit more reliable than a thing that you're making work in a way that it wasn't necessarily intended to be used. I recently installed this fly screen from Dart here. I don't remember what it's called, so I'll throw it on the screen here. I always forget the name of the one I have, but it is the biggest one that they make for this bike. And when I posted the videos of it, I got a bunch of mixed comments and mixed reviews. A lot of people said it looks great and job well done. Some people said that they bought the same one and they absolutely love it. I had other comments saying that it was a waste of money and it's ugly and it's not actually going to do anything. So I'm here to answer the questions and set the record straight. 2 questions that I got about it specifically are, do I think it was worth the money, and does it actually make a difference? And the answer to both those questions is yes. It makes a huge difference on the highway, especially if you kind of lean down and tuck behind it a little bit. At sitting straight up at my height, I'm 5'11". Obviously, I'm still out in the wind, right? It's only helping a little bit, not massively. It's kind of small, right? But when you tuck down and kind of put your helmet behind it a little bit, it really does allow you to get into a nice tuck and just get out of the wind. For those moments when you're feeling a little bit fatigued on the highway, you can kind of get out of it for a bit. Is it making a difference the whole trip? Not really. But like I said, when you tuck down there, it really does. And was it worth the money? Absolutely. I didn't even spend that much money on it, so it was a really great bargain to me. I'm sure I put the price on the screen by now, but yeah, that much money, which isn't a whole lot. Another question I get asked a lot is, do I wish the bike had more power? And honestly, the answer is kind of like a mixed batch. Those of you who have been watching these videos for a long time know that I used to have the Triumph Bobber 1200. It looked like this. I loved it. I miss it dearly. But that engine was one of the most incredible engines I've ever had. From a stoplight, that torque hit so hard that it was really, really fun. So around town, I do miss that. This bike in general is more docile, but with that kind of docile behavior comes a smoother throttle response. You get less hit, you get like a nice even curve, which I really appreciate on really long trips. I am definitely not the go fast kind of guy. I'm the go far kind of guy. I like riding all day long, obeying the traffic laws, but like going really, really far. I'm 1,000 miles in a day kind of guy, not 120 miles an hour all the time kind of guy. The fastest I've ever gotten this bike is probably 90 miles an hour, and that was like just to find out if it would do it with ease, you know? I don't ride fast, so in everyday life and on trips, no, I don't really wish I had more power, but every now and again, ripping off of a stoplight, I do kind of miss the bobber, so kind of torn. Do I really need more power? No, but would it be fun? Sure. I've also been asked if I wish the bike had more gas, and the answer to that, full stop, yes. This gas tank is very, very small, and because of that, I'm stopping every 80 to 100 or so miles. There's a wasp. I'm stopping every 80 to 100 miles, and sometimes that's just really, really annoying. If I'm trying to do like 1,000 miles, that many gas stops is too much. This tank is somewhere around 3 gallons-ish. I'll float it up here. A bunch of the other Triumph Modern Classics have like a closer to 5-gallon tank. I'll roll the specific here as well. I do wish I had that tank. Would the bike look a little worse with that tank? Yes. But would I appreciate it more? Absolutely. A few of you have asked what other mods I have planned for this bike, and it is me, of course. My favorite thing to do is bolt a bunch of things to a motorcycle, so obviously the list is pretty long. I'm not going to try to drag this video on by getting really in-depth about all of those parts, but I will cover them really quickly just to answer the question. But 2 things to keep in mind with any part I put on the bike. 1, I am going to drop a link in the description and bio section of every single video with links to every single part I buy, as well as all of the gear I wear. So if you want to get something, you want to get the exact same thing I have, there'll be a link right there for you to click and make it easy. Also, every single part that I mentioned will have a designated video all about it where I unbox it, install it, and review it. So just because I'm like blasting over it now doesn't mean there won't be like way more info on it in the future. Just hit subscribe, stay tuned, it will happen. But to kind of get into it, we're going to start on the front end here, I guess work our way down and then over. First, I am going to run hand guards so I can protect these levers from getting broken. I am also going to upgrade the headlight to an LED unit that's just way nicer and way brighter. I'm going to add pod auxiliary lights to add even more just extra lighting when I'm in the dark, because I do a lot of off-road and highway nighttime miles, so I just want all the light as possible to stay safe out there. Next up, we already covered that I'm going to run mag wheels that are tubeless. I am going to also upgrade the factory skid plate because this plastic thing is nothing. I'm going to run engine crash bars because, as you can see here, the bike gets used and it's going to need them. And then I'm going to run a 2-into-1 exhaust for a couple different reasons. 1, I think 2-into-1s look sick, but 2, it'll shed a little bit of weight, which I need to do to offset all of the stuff that I'm bolting on. Just try to keep the weight around the same as best as possible, because I am what you call a beefy boy. So I need all the weight loss help I can get. And I will probably upgrade the rear suspension because, again, hefty boy problems. I do bottom this out a little bit when I throw a passenger on, when I load it down with luggage. It's not really set up for that. And a question that I'm asked probably every single day: does the exhaust get hot? Yes, the exhaust gets hot, but it's not problematic at all. If you're kind of sitting on the bike the way you're supposed to in your riding position, or at a stoplight with your right leg covering the rear brake, your knee is tucked up out of the way and it is perfectly fine. You can feel a little bit of heat, but it's nothing bad. It's nothing worse than just a Harley engine. Those of you who are not new here know that before this bike, I was riding a Harley Dyna every day, and that engine was so hot that I had to like spread my legs out really far. I couldn't even leave my right leg on the brake lever because I would just start cooking my leg. So the heat shield on the bike is really good. You can actually touch it while it's running, all 3 sections of it, and you will not burn your hand. It does stay pretty cool in that regard. And if you're riding the bike like knees tucked up the way they're supposed to be, like up in the tank, no heat is actually getting to you. Same if you are stopped at a red light and you got your foot on the rear brake like you're supposed to when you stop at a red light. That's motorcycle safety 101. If you have your foot on that brake, covering that rear brake, your leg is tucked up high enough where it's not a problem at all. But where it does become an issue is if you're straddling the bike instead. So if you're at a red light and you're like this, this portion of your thigh will actually get some heat. It radiates out of that little pocket right there, and you will definitely feel it if you're standing like this, especially in the stop and go traffic on the summer days, all of those things that make your bike run a little hotter. You'll feel it that way. But if you simply put your foot up and cover that rear brake like you should be in the first place, your leg is far enough away from it where it's not an issue at all. The only thing I will point out is that obviously this should be self-explanatory, but I know it might not be. The heat shield does end here, so this part here does get super hot. Be careful with how you tie down your bags. Be careful with how your passenger's sitting with any kind of loose clothing or anything, all of that. This part will be fire hot, so avoid that like the plague, but the whole rider area, perfectly fine. Do I think this bike needs a 6th gear? That is a spicy one. Do I think it needs it? No, it's perfectly fine as is. I am super happy, but do I think it would benefit from one? Sure, it'd probably be a better motorcycle if it had a 6-speed, but there's a couple different issues with that. For one, that engine does not exist. Triumph has a bunch of different 3-cylinder engines with a 6-speed transmission that they're using in adventure bikes and like sportier stuff. Those exist, and this bike has always been the twin cylinder with the 5-speed, right? Having only a couple of engines and using them in a bunch of different chassis lowers their overall R&D and like custom part fabrication cost, so that they can offer us these bikes at a kind of a little bit of a lower price point than other European offerings. And making this bike a 6-speed would mean one of two things. Either they need to do away with this engine altogether and overhaul the entire lineup, or they need to make a one-off transmission for this, which just doesn't make any sense. Like monetarily, it would be a huge waste of money. The better thing to do, I think, for you as the consumer is just gear your bike in a way that works for you. The sprockets and chains are a wearable item. You're gonna have to change them anyway, so mix up your gearing. When you go to get new sprockets, new chain, just switch it up, try something different, and see if you find a gearing that works better for your riding style. That is the solution here, not Triumph spending a bunch of money and not this bike getting more expensive, because it's already kind of getting up there in cost. So I believe that covers every single question I am asked really often about the Scrambler 900. I will just say up front, I absolutely love this motorcycle. I am so satisfied with the purchase. A lot of the mods that I'm doing are just to make it that much better, or because I'm a dude that's bored and likes to tinker. This bike from the factory is one of the best motorcycles I've ever purchased. I am super happy with it. If you're on the fence about whether or not you should get one, I highly encourage you go test ride it, borrow a friend's if you can, get some seat time on it, and I think you'll be convinced. If you're wanting to do more off-road, maybe go ahead and consider the taller Scrambler. If you're wanting to be a little bit of a racy boy, maybe consider getting yourself the Speed Twin. Or if you're more on a budget, the Street Twin 900 or the Speed Twin 900 it's called now. Great alternative if you have no intention of going off-road, but the Scrambler for me does it all. It does touring, it does off-road, it's fun, I love it. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you liked it, hit thumbs up. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit subscribe. And last but not least, go ahead and have yourself a fantastic day, because every single one of you deserves just that, an amazing day. I will see you on the next one. Peace.